ready to get to your seat, sir. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 25th, 2019 Hingham School Committee meeting. Thank you for being here tonight. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and televised by Harbor Media. Second item on the agenda is approval of minutes. So in your packet, you should see minutes of the meeting of the Hingham School Committee and Advisory Subcommittee, ACES Subcommittee meeting, and the full AdCom meeting that some of us attended on February 7th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the school committee meeting and advisory committee education subcommittee meeting and yes, held on February 7th, 2019.
Carrie, thank you. And any discussion? No? Everybody good? Then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You abstained because you were not there. So it was just myself, Carlos, Carrie, Liza, and Ed. So Kay and Libby abstained. All right. Thank you. All right. I think those are it for minutes, right, Kay? Yes. Okay. All right. Item number 3, questions and comments. The Hingham School Committee encourages community engagement and welcomes questions and comments as agenda items are discussed at our meeting. In addition, we also have set aside time at the beginning of the meeting for comments or questions that fall under the purview of the school committee and are not already on tonight's agenda. Are there any guests here who have anything to bring? Not on the agenda? All right, then we will move on to Dr. Gallo's superintendent report.
I just wanted to remind folks at home of the kindergarten enrollment that is opening up this week. The packets are available at the schools that the children will attend. If there's someone who doesn't know what school, they can call this office and give their street address and find out where the child will go to school. I also want to mention that each of the 4 elementary schools will hold a coffee hour kind of meeting for parents in that school at the very beginning of the enrollment process, so parents can come and pick up the folder, parents can come and return their folder, but be there with other parents at that school and get to meet the administration and also have an opportunity to meet the classmates who will be in their building. And we'll be watching the kindergarten enrollment very carefully because we have in the budget an additional teacher that we hope we will not need because we're going to have some budget cutting to do, shouldn't say cutting, reducing to do in terms of the overall budget, and that would be a good place to start if we can reduce something that we don't have a great need for. Under communications received by the superintendent. I'm sorry.
Are we working with the PTOs to get the word out about kindergarten enrollment period?
We are not. No, we are not as a group. I don't know whether or not the principals are doing that.
Okay.
I was actually going to ask, since I know it is particularly important this year for the kindergarten enrollment because of the budget. Can community outreach do anything to help putting things on?
Sure.
Facebook?
Yeah.
The discussion board, like just directing people to the website to pick up the.
We have the names of the students who are listed in the recent, the town clerk's recent street list update. We always call that the census, and she's reminded me a number of times that it really isn't a census. Its purpose is not to ascertain names of potential kindergartners. It's to update the street list and the voter list, and they do that every year. And that's one of the reasons there's always a discrepancy between that and the actual enrollment. And that's because they're not really counting students. They count them in the process of doing what they're doing, but they're really there to update the list. And that's another reason that that list is somewhat inaccurate, because names always occur in it of people who no longer live in Hingham. And apparently there is a piece of legislation that says that you have to keep a name on the voter list for 2 years after someone moves. So sometimes in the late summer, when the secretaries are rushing around trying to get some sense of what has happened to those names that were on the list earlier in the year. It's simply that they have moved away because their 2 years was up, or they haven't moved away, but they have moved away, literally, and so their names are there when they could be in another state or another country for that reason, so.
Well, you put a post on the Hingham Public School Facebook page about kindergarten enrollment?
I will, yes.
So I would be in favor of, if community outreach wanted to share that to other boards, even if it was your own personal name because of being a member of, like, the Penn board. If it was that exact same wording, just to get the word out, because I think that's where that age group of parents are active. So I would be in favor of the community outreach representatives doing that to share. But I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think if we identified specific sites, we knew where we were going. But
Can you guys?
I think that's.
Yeah. Okay, that'd be good. Because I know I sent you that email today that I think some of the preschools didn't get the information, which isn't there. I mean, they're not required
That may be
to.
misinformation in that the preschools are not supposed to hand out the packets.
Right.
Their only obligation or responsibility, or because we can't order them to do something,
Right.
is to send out the notification that the enrollment period is coming up.
Yes. So, yeah. So I'm not sure, but I thought that's what had not, maybe that was a miscommunication, but I thought they hadn't sent out the notice perhaps. But anyway, I mean, I think just the more publicity around it, the better. Right?
And just so that, for the committee's information, we did send a reminder memo to all of our community preschools about enrollment,
Okay.
as well as the policy change relative to
Yep.
age, which was the request from, so that was delivered by hard copy and
Okay.
electronic copy to all of our community preschools.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It always helps to repeat.
Absolutely.
So sorry. All right. So back to your communications.
I was starting to talk about the other item. When we got notification last spring that the final, the NEASC report had been approved by the commission and then finally by the board, and we got official notification, there were some highlighted recommendations that needed to be done, a handful of them, that needed to be done by January, the past January, and then there are some others that are the subject of a 2-year report. So what, I think you all received the same thing, what you all received was a letter that was a thank you for submitting what you were required to submit. However, there are still more things that you have to send in the 2-year report, and we'll be watching to see what further changes you make in one particular area, and that's the notion of the standard that says each child should have someone in the school in addition to the guidance counselor that he or she knows well enough to be considered someone they could confide in or ask advice of, and so on. So the school had a committee. I think Dave Jewett chaired the committee. They submitted a report that said they had enhanced the freshman advisory committee, but hadn't yet, and not sure whether they will add to the advisory committee concept to all the grades. It's difficult to do something like that in a high school like ours, where many of the courses cross grades, and typically you want your advisory program to be grade specific, and that's just not an easy thing to do. Not impossible, but so I think they're very careful about thinking about how they might expand on that. But anyway, good news, and they completed yet another NEASC requirement. So that letter will simply go in the file, and we will await when the 2 years from when they were the visit occurred, which was a year ago in September.
communications? Emma?
Coming back from vacation, some things that happened before vacation. So starting on Valentine's Day, the members of our Spreading Acts of Kindness Club teamed up with Foster Elementary's Kindness Club to make cards for the residents of Harbor House. And a day later, the Veterans Appreciation Club presented a check for $750 to the Massachusetts Military Support Foundation, and this money will go to aiding veterans and families in time of need. A few days before a break occurred, 23 students and 3 amazing teachers brought Hingham High School's core values to life as they traveled to the Dominican Republic on a service trip. Our global citizenship and respect for others were proved as the little kids they visited would not let go when it was time to leave. The Breathe Out Club kicks off this week with a Say Something Week to help recall the Sandy Hook tragedy and hope to prevent it and raise awareness of suicide prevention and school safety in our community. The Quiz Bowl team won the RI State National History Bowl competition on Saturday and qualified for the national championship in April. And for sports, there are a lot of exciting outcomes and news. First off, for the girls track team, they won the Division III state championship, and a few of them qualified for all states, which is this upcoming weekend, and nationals. The boys basketball team have their first playoff game at 7 on Wednesday, and girls basketball on Thursday at 6:30, and these games will both be home. The boys hockey team plays on Sunday in Lowell, while the girls hockey plays in Hingham on Wednesday at 5. And Nick Capitalupo, a junior at our high school, is the Massachusetts nominee for the Heart of the Arts Award, as he is a Herald-known star singer that sings the national anthem at many sporting events, and a great athlete. And finally, as the Boston CBS local news says, this is a community where everyone is encouraged to play together. High school students and coaches continue to participate in SNAP events, including basketball this winter, and there was a nice little article in the newspaper on that. And personally, I've taken part in SNAP soccer, where I created relationships with kids who I may have never met in our high school because they may not attend our high school yet, and others at our high school that I'm able to say hi to in the hall, and it makes their day and they smile. It's a great relationship and program, and I encourage all parents and kids to join.
No. All right. Unfinished business. Item 6, to hear an update on the administration's proposed preliminary operating budget.
John included a memo in the packet, and I sent you some thoughts about along the same line yesterday. And the message today is really very similar to what it's been the past couple of years, except both John and I have a more modest feeling of how much more change there will be, of a significant nature anyway. But we know that we aren't where the Board of Selectmen and Advisory Committee would like for us to be. I think we all had that sense and heard words to that effect at the time of the joint meeting. From the last time we talked about this, which was 2 weeks ago, we have been able to reduce the bottom line a bit more, again, by happenstance changes, not because there are large things that have occurred. We've been able to reduce the bottom line because of personnel things largely, but also because we made some reductions in the utilities budget. But at the same time, we had to add some money for a couple of new things that weren't in the original budget, but also because we had word that there could likely be a couple of additional vocational tuitions. And so when you become aware of those things, you don't necessarily put in for all things that might occur, but we do have to add if we know of multiple kids that are coming. So we went from 5.39 to 5.31, which is where we ended, I think, the last meeting. And so going into today, as of last Friday anyway, we had 5.18. We do believe that we're going to need to reduce significantly more. But quite honestly, we don't have anything specific on that yet. So it's hard to start cutting further and reducing real things that are things that we need or could even already have when we don't have a target. And so as we've asked in the past couple of years, we have asked that we not take a budget vote tonight. I mean, we could take a vote and cut significant things and then find out that maybe we didn't need to cut that much. And so we ask instead that we use this as a discussion meeting where we can get some good information rather than having to rush into good information when we finally find out what the target is. We don't anticipate major changes that result from unknown things. Last year, we had, at this point, maybe 6 or 7 folks who hadn't yet told us whether they were returning from a leave or not. And depending upon whether the person on leave is very experienced and has a high salary or not so experienced and a lesser salary, it's hard to predict what those changes would make. We only have 2, as of this morning, people that are on leave this year that hadn't yet told us. They don't have to tell us till March 1st, but there are only 2 of them, and as of tonight, we know what's happening with both of them.
Okay.
I left that note on your desk when you stepped out, and that's kind of a net no new news kind of thing, because one of those 2 teachers is going to take another year, so there'll be a slight savings there, and the other one is going to return. And since we always budget for the person who's on leave just to cover ourselves, that person's coming back, the other one's staying out, so there's not a lot of change, if any, there. So there are not a lot of places for change to occur. We had an unanticipated retirement that is in the budget and was in it as of tonight, and that was something that never happens. On the other hand, that's somebody who left in the middle of the year. That never happens. Well, it did just happen, so there are unexpected things, and that happened to be a very large savings because it was a person who had a higher salary, and we believe we can replace her with someone with a lower salary. So there will be things like that that come along. I mentioned the kindergarten additional teacher based on our enrollment projection largely that our enrollment will continue to grow by small amounts over time, not because we have any prior knowledge other than that, but simply the projection. So, but time brings the possibility for change. So for as long as we can hang in there to take advantage of changes that come along without having to reduce things that we don't want to reduce at least not yet, then the better off we will be. So that's one request. Second thing that would be helpful to us is that if there are any things in the budget, particularly the new items, hopefully not anything that's been in the budget all along, but there are things that are in the budget that are new items that there is school committee consensus on being in the category of things that we don't value or things that we don't need, and that there is consensus that we ought to get those out of there to save space for dollar space for those things that we do highly value and want to prioritize, then that's something you should talk about. Are there any of those things? And if so, is this a time to access them, so to speak? Second thing is that you each have some priorities in common, and you have some that are different from your peers. In the end, as we have to make a recommendation to you, once we get a target presented in front of us, we need to come up with a response to that. We would suggest, given this target, that you reduce the following things. It would be helpful to know what you each value and would prioritize. So, this is a good meeting to have the time, the luxury of time to do that, so that we know where you stand. We've already made the same outreach at an administrative council meeting to our principals and the central office folks to speak up and say, what are the things, given that we think we're going to have to reduce a fair amount of dollars, then what are the things that you think we absolutely have to retain as things in the budget, and what are the things that would need to go? And then we need to come up with a recommendation based upon what you all think and what our administrators think, because in the end, those kinds of reductions finally fall in your court, and it would be good to know what you're thinking. So, the other item that you need to discuss particularly was on the agenda anyway, but particularly with the news that we got over the weekend about the wording of the warrant article that was known or is known as Article C.
So let's start with the budget. John.
I can if you tell me where you put it.
It's in the drive.
Okay.
John, did you have anything to add before we start talking, or would you like us to just?
No, I think Dot
Okay.
said it, there's two changes since the last time. One was a resignation and the other was an extended leave of absence.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, there's
So we're down
should be a
to,
presentation.
so we're down to 5.18?
Yeah, it's down to 5.18 for a budget of $54,699,058. And, in your package there, you see how it's tracked. So on the next page, you see the changes that have taken place to date. And then what we have is then we have the new items that we set up within this budget right now of the $1,017,000. So, those are really what we'd like to get a sense for the committee tonight of, where the priorities lie within that group, knowing that we will probably have to reduce this further, and, significantly further, knowing what the forecast is.
Thank you, John.
Mhm.
So everybody got the forecast information last meeting. So not knowing what we're potentially have to cut, I guess let's start with an obvious question, though, to Dr. Gallo's point and John's point, assuming everyone no one has anything on the current budget that they want to discuss, not the current budget, but the current expenses that we have. Does anyone have anything in there? No. So we would just be talking about newly created items in the budget that we might need to prioritize. So that's the $1,017,702.
Yeah, $1,017,702.
Everything in this left column of these two pages.
Are the new. So we would just be talking about the new items and priorities, and/or is there anything in here that anyone isn't married to keeping? I know it's an extremely difficult, it's so hard, right? Because there's nothing in here that's not valued or nothing in here that's not needed. Some things are mandated, right? So that's going to be difficult or impossible to cut those things. And then other things are sort of structural deficits. So it's not like we're asking for a bunch of extra bells and whistles in the budget. We're really looking for funding for mandated items and to shore up some what we feel are deficits. So this is a tough exercise, but one that we need to go through.
Especially with all those, the leave of absence, we know those now, as Dot said, and, it's not going to be anything significant. You're looking at under $10,000 of a movement there, probably 5 or 6.
Okay.
So,
Dates of when the advisory will be voting on this?
Yes, I was going to share those a little
And the
bit later.
selectmen?
But we do, yes. So tomorrow night, AdCom has a regularly scheduled meeting, and they'll be discussing some of the warrant articles at 7:30. Their budget hearing on the educational budget will be Thursday at 7:30. And then Tuesday, tomorrow night, AdCom ACES is having a subcommittee meeting at 9 p.m. So we can discuss those, but those are the upcoming dates. So AdCom's hearing is this Thursday.
Voting on the number.
Um,
Is that the 27th?
That would be the following week.
Probably the following week, yes.
I don't know if they already
George, do you
established
know
the date.
dates?
We don't have a date yet.
Okay. So the hearing is this Thursday.
So I
And then-
Definitely not this week.
Okay.
So I think we go through this exercise for the last many years, right? And one of the things that we have been saying, I said, is that, I mean, obviously, the items have been placed as a line item because there is a huge need for it. There's nothing here that we don't need to incorporate. And yes, it's true that we may not have all the money, but why do we have to vote on eliminating and going through this process?
We're definitely not voting tonight on the budget, so.
Okay.
It was on the calendar tentatively to vote on the budget for tonight, but we are not going to vote on the budget. This is just, is there anything in here that we have consensus on that either is absolutely we are not cutting this, or
Okay.
if we need to, I guess we could come up here. I mean, I agree with you. I don't want to negotiate against myself, with all due respect to AdCom and Board of Selectmen. But we do have to start thinking about it. So I don't know if anybody has any particular priorities in here that is an absolute must-have, or,
I actually
Start.
have some questions.
More
just
questions?
More clarification. For the secondary teachers, secondary science, secondary STEM, the full FTE, is that the AP computer science, and, or what are those roles?
Well, we don't
That-
know exactly what they'll be. The number there is based more on the breakdown that we had last year in terms of the typical number of kids that enroll in the courses, so.
Okay.
And that could change, and that's why we always say we won't make that exact decision
Right.
until the first week in May.
Okay.
It's
But
just
you were
that,
talking science, though? She
Hmm?
was talking the science.
well, the computer science, are we talking about the materials, or which?
no, the CS teacher, the
Yeah.
AP CS, is a .2 coming in as a math request at the
So
high
that's
school.
part of that .6 math?
Correct. .2 of that is the AP CS.
I think that when we were talking about these before, I tried to explain that some of needing some math and some science classes is because teachers not because we have more kids, but teachers in those courses, math and science courses, went to teach a STEM course or went to teach a computer science course, but we still had the same need for math classes. So we've squished, if you will, over time in math and science to have bodies to put into the computer science and the STEM courses that we wanted to offer.
Okay, then, I guess what I'm trying to get to is what would happen if we postpone those initiatives and nobody wants to, I don't want to, but if we had to postpone a new initiative, how would that
Or
impact?
let class sizes go larger. I mean, that's another
Well, yeah,
alternative.
yeah.
And just say, if we want these, then we've got to put larger sciences in certain math and computer science classes.
So then I'm just trying to really understand what the request is so that when we know what difficult choice we have to make, we know how we're doing. So when we had 1.0 of secondary science, 1.0 secondary STEM, and then there was a 0.5 secondary English, 0.4 foreign language, 0.2 social studies, 0.6 math, 0.2 art. So all of those together are all based on the offerings and
No, not all of them.
what,
Just-
and then the class size at the secondary level? Or is there a specific new offering that we're offering and we're hiring staff for?
Not one that is brand new this year, but for example, last year, when we expanded the STEM, middle school STEM course,
Yeah,
was only grade 6.
right,
And we expanded that into grade 7 and 8. Well, you can imagine, after having already had a STEM course in grade 6, which they love,
right.
we were overloaded with kids. So that's probably the newest of the initiatives
And I
that
think
we
that's
have.
the STEM one. So when you
Okay.
read
It
it,
is,
that's
yeah.
the STEM, is middle
Okay.
school.
Okay,
Expanding the STEM program to 7th and 8th grade.
Okay.
The only new addition programmatically would be the offering relative to APCS.
Which is
And
the
that's represented by a
0.2.
0.2 of the math
Okay.
request.
okay,
So it's really not, it'd be one section.
okay, all right.
But the hard thing is,
Hmm.
until we know exactly how many youngsters have signed up for every single course, we
Right.
can't say that if we didn't get another .2 in the math program, then we absolutely wouldn't offer that, because maybe the numbers
Sure,
will work
yeah.
out, so that we can.
Right, but we could add up all the decimal points to have total FTEs and then fit in as much as we can based on the budget we end up with too,
Mhm.
correct? Okay.
Correct.
That's what, I'm trying to understand all of that.
And this represents not all of the things that were
Right.
asked for either.
Yes, I understand that. And then the adjustment counselor that was requested, right now that's paid for by Title I funds.
Right now, it's a .8 position that's grant funded through Title I.
Okay,
Yeah, and we do anticipate, although Title I funding, I can never guarantee it's going to be there,
Right.
but we
is
are
there a
pretty.
chance we're gonna get that again?
There is, yeah.
Okay, so worst comes to worst,
Correct.
but
That
we
be-
could do better if we know for sure we have the person and
Correct.
plan accordingly,
Yeah.
okay. And I guess those were my big clarification questions. I guess, is there anything with special ed that we're at serious jeopardy of fulfilling our obligations and providing the services?
Suzanne, we've had a discussion with Suzanne, with the principals, and she has a couple of priorities that she would rethink likely if we had to make a major cut, because we don't know that we have the students that would be appropriate grade and cohort that would fill one of the things that she's looking for. So certainly looking, and that's what they're all having to do, is looking more at what the needs are for specific kids now that we are going back to November. They made these requests, and so what has changed since November in terms of what we think we're going to need? So Suzanne's giving thought to her perspective based upon that, on how do we match the needs we now have, not the needs we thought we might have in November, and what's the best.
I guess, for me, that's a lot of the, I have my thoughts, but I really rely on what's truly needed. And if we're going back, from November till now, that's a big difference of understanding what we really need. So I would like more time of really knowing what the dollar number we need to get to and fine tuning the true needs.
And that's what they're all doing, really, in
Yeah.
terms of the personnel, is saying, okay, what's different between now and when we put this budget together in November, and how would I make reductions if I had to, based on that?
Okay.
I think it's all important, and I think we should probably wait until we get our target number and get closer. As far as any initiatives, I think in my opinion, we should really prioritize anything that's going to save money in the long term too, and provide better services, education. So things like the van contract, the ABA, doing the pilot program, even if it's going to cost us a little this year, it may actually end up saving a lot of money down the road. So I think things like that we should really think about. And then just personally, the inclusion facilitators, I think that is such a huge need, just programmatically, and it was recommended in the BU report that came out for the middle school too. So those, I'd prioritize those.
Yeah, I would agree with the inclusion facilitator too. I mean, that's an important role, and I think it's also important. I mean, we brought Dr. Venice into the district, and relying on her expertise and all the things that she's brought. So we want to give her the things that she needs to work with the special ed students and staff. So I'm with you on that one for sure. That is very important. Does anybody else have any other thoughts that are?
In terms of the teacher for kindergarten, the provisional teacher 1.0, that is a $70,000, but that comes, there is an offset that
There is an offset, but we've already added that offset, so it wouldn't be any more of an offset.
Yeah.
So what's the enrollment number if you need the,
Well,
what is it, the seventh teacher, or how
We really
many?
can't talk about the total. We have to go
Okay.
building by building.
Oh,
And
right.
how many do we need in each school, and add them all up. We can't do it the other way around, because they don't always break that way.
Right.
So right now, we have 14 sections, so we have
East.
fours and threes and fours.
Threes and fours.
yeah.
The extra, wasn't it East?
East has
Was the potential extra section.
right.
Got it, okay.
So why wouldn't there be more offset? Because
Well, because
Do we
we already
want
took an
to-
additional offset. We had an offset in the original budget, and then in one of the earlier reductions, John had recalculated and found that he thought we had underestimated the offset. So he was able to add to that offset, which reduced the bottom line.
So we had the rate increase, so the
Right.
rate increase fed in there, but at the same time too, I took the enrollment that we have now, and I looked at the current mix based on the new rates. And I calculated what that would be, and then, up that number to what, 893 or something
Yep.
along those lines. So now, if we ended up with another section, that's at 285, 290. If we got to 300, we may still be okay, but we may only add 10 kids, so we may not get a full offset. We still probably would tweak a little bit.
Right, yeah.
But it's not gonna offset 70,000. You know what I mean? It depends on how many more kids develop in order to generate the remaining offset. So I looked at the whole universe now and took the current mix of like, how many do we have full pay, how many this, so I used last year's mix in order to do that based on the new rates. So I sort of recalculated the whole mix, and that's the new offset that I have placed in here, with like a $10,000 or a $20,000 cushion, right? I always leave a cushion because we don't know where we're gonna, be in that collection, right? If the mix changed a little bit, I could go down a little bit. But the next year, I'd use that up anyways. I mean, we don't accumulate money in that
But
account.
if we go up 10 kids, then that is,
Should be
Some more
hopefully
offset.
37,000,
Yeah.
somewhere around
Yeah.
there, yes.
so it's not the full
It'll be some
amount.
mix.
Right.
Absolutely, right. No, correct. There'll definitely be more if we had to keep
Right.
the position, I think. We just don't know that it'll be up to the whole 70
Right,
that the budget assumes.
yeah. Right, I will note, at the kindergarten enrollment, I looked at the difference of October to February, because I was trying to see,
Yeah.
could we
Could that happen
save a
next
teacher?
year,
But then I
or-
realized
You know.
the third grade class, it goes up again. Fourth grade class is smaller, and then the third grade, so our current fourth grade class is 303, and third grade, and our current fifth grade class is
Sometimes some things-
365. But then you go back, and then third grade is 331, so it goes back up again, so it doesn't pay to drop a teacher for 1 year and readjust it. That's too complicated. So unfortunately, I was looking for every little bit.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Easy
On
to
the
cut.
on the budget thing, it says inclusion facilitator. I thought I heard it was 2 facilitators, one for each, the middle school and high school. Okay. All right.
That,
okay.
yes, so it should say include, yeah, it should say 2 next to it.
Yeah.
That's 2.
Well, I know the amount, but I just wanted to ask if that was.
Right.
definitely 2.
So it should, maybe we could put a 2.0 next to that to.
Yeah, I give it 2.0. It's
Okay.
just the way it's all individual things, it's the note, I gotta put 2.0 there.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no, thank you, June. Any other thoughts, questions, considerations? I mean, I wish it was an easier process to try to cut, or to try to reduce some of these things, but, I mean, these are all, I mean, everything that's listed on this extras is either a mandate or a structural deficit that we have identified. And so, I know the forecast calls for a shortfall, but I'm hoping that somehow it will work, that we will be able to get this funded, because there's truly not anything in here. And I think just based on the silence of the committee, I wish that we had some things that we could say, oh, this could go, but at this point, I don't think we have that. So if we don't get, the $1 million of new funds, it's going to be very challenging to reduce any of these expenses. So I think everyone probably agrees. So, all right, so thank you. Thank you for all your work on this. It's been a tough budget season, I think, but the needs just keep going up every year, right? The burden on the schools doesn't ever decrease, right? They just keep piling things on top, and we do, it's our duty to meet the needs of all the students, so, and that costs money, so.
It's really hard to see now where any reductions,
I
where
know.
any true reductions to the budget number will come, aside from removing those, because, and of course, then there's always risk of new ones being added on, with, a new student moves into town, or we have, there's this budget right here. We did get one new VOTEC student that we know is in there, and that's the one that's in the budget, but there's 2 that have had made application that are not in the budget. So, I mean, we could still, at this point, be going up, which is not what I want to tell you.
Right.
And we won't know the disposition of those youngsters until
April 1st or something, somewhere.
even later
Later
than
than
that.
that, yeah.
Because sometimes they don't report to us right away that they got
Right.
in, or sometimes they get in a second round after somebody who was accepted decides not to go, and they go back, kind of like a college admissions situation, but we're not going to know in the next couple of weeks, that's for sure. And those are mandated payments that we need to make.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, thanks, everybody. All right, moving on to 6.3, continue discussion on warrant Article Z and act as appropriate. So warrant Article Z is the appropriation of funds for the foster school feasibility study that at this point had indicated that with or without being accepted into the MSBA eligibility period, the town would appropriate the funds to the school building committee to begin a feasibility study. So everybody got my email over the weekend with the recommendation from the town council and the town moderator that changes changes what we're doing here. So in a nutshell for folks at home, so the 2019 town meeting cannot amend an article that was voted at the 2017 town meeting. So the article that we had presented was an amendment, so that is not, that's not possible to do it that way. So Michael Puzo had provided us with some potential language on this that we might consider that we would need to make in order to bring the warrant article into compliance. But I think that we need to have a discussion about the warrant article just in general and in particular about whether it makes sense to continue forward with this article. I've done a lot of research with the MSBA and on their website, talking to some folks in my company who do municipal financing, and it's, well, I'll leave it open for discussion. But I think there's some risks here because there's a lot of unknowns, and I think that part of the issue too, I think with this feasibility study, the change in the warrant article, I'm not even sure if there's time to get changes done before everything needs to be put in, right? Because I don't know if we even logistically we can put it through, because we'd have to make this change, we'd have to vote on it, AdCom would still have to vote on it, Board of Selectmen would have to vote on it, Board of Selectmen would have to reopen the warrant articles to let us put it in there, so. But I'm going to open it up for discussion of what folks are thinking about the warrant article and the, I was going to say feasibility, of the appropriateness, not appropriateness, but what do we think about keeping the article in there or potentially withdrawing it? And I will save my opinions.
I just want to make sure that my understanding is correct.
Sure.
The question is, putting this will putting this article in put our chances of getting the funding this year at risk?
So my answer to that would be, and based on what I've found on the MSBA website, there's nothing that says it would, but it clearly states that if a town appropriates money for planning, studying, designing, building, you will not be eligible for MSBA funds. So my feeling is that in the absence of them saying it will not hurt your chances, I feel like the risk is great that it would. I think in the absence of not knowing that it doesn't hurt your chances, I think there's a real risk that it does hurt your chances. My feeling is that one way, nothing is going to be done. We have to wait. We've agreed already, and this proposed article even says that we are waiting for the MSBA till December of 2019, right? We're trying for a third time, and if we don't get the funding I shouldn't even say the funding, because the MSBA you get invited into eligibility, and then you're not even guaranteed, just because you got invited in, you're not guaranteed to get feasibility funding or any funding from them. So if we were invited into it, even if we were invited in December, nothing happens. We can't expend any funds. The building committee can't expend any funds for the Foster School until, at the earliest, January of 2020. And my thought is, and I've actually talked to AdCom about this, and I've talked to Board of Selectmen, and understanding that those boards can change, but they had said that they would be supportive, or at least now that they understand and would support if we needed to have a special town meeting in January of 2020 to bring a new warrant article forward to do the feasibility study in January if we didn't get selected by the MSBA in December. So with or without this warrant article, we'd have to wait until January anyway.
So my understanding is the proposed change that came in with that email was that if we were denied by the MSBA, the Board of Selectmen and the school committee there would be money set aside for a feasibility study as long as the Board of Selectmen and the school committee approved it. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes.
So that seems a lot less costly to the town than a special town meeting, and it seems to make the most sense. I mean, hopefully we'll get, this will be moot point, will be accepted, but if we aren't, I think we need to have some next steps. We have to do something about Foster. I mean, it's just.
Oh, yeah, we do. No, and everybody, I don't mean to cut you off, but I don't want the argument to go down that road because everybody recognizes that. The school committee recognizes, the school department recognizes, the Board of Selectmen has said it out loud, the advisory committee has said it out loud. Everyone has agreed that in January of 2020, something is being done for the Foster School, whether it is with the MSBA or without the MSBA. My concern is that this sends a big signal to the risk is that this sends a big signal to the MSBA that the town is willing to go it alone, and then they say, well, if they're willing to do it, then let's go with towns that aren't willing to do it or aren't able to do it. I think that's the risk. I mean, nothing happens between now and December of this year with or without this article, and we could do something in January.
I understand the original article, how that would send that message, because it basically releases the funds, and so that kind of does send the message.
Right.
But this would still have to go through the Board of Selectmen and the school committee if we did the proposed change to it. It just makes more sense because it's putting it out there to the community. Okay, we recognize this, rather than just saying we're going to do something. It's basically putting our money where our mouth is. To move it forward, and I think we need to. Yeah.
So I went through that same thought process, but then the more I looked into MSBA process, our own, and thinking about all of this, back in 2017, so one of the challenges with this warrant article is it locks us into $750,000. And even back in 2017, John had picked $750,000 as an average of what we might need at that time for feasibility. So this brings us 3 years past that time. And we know that costs have risen since that time. And so do we even know that $750,000 would be enough to accomplish what we would need to get done? And so I'm leaning towards not going forward with this for the reason that I would rather know in January what do we exactly need in order to take the next step of moving forward. And it could be, if we're going with the MSBA, that they will have requirements of what we need to revote something. It will still have to go through a vote of the school committee and the Board of Selectmen and possibly the advisory committee if it becomes a regular town meeting warrant article, or even a special town meeting for that matter. So we're still going through the same process of getting a vote from the school committee and the Board of Selectmen as written in this revision. But if we if we got denied by the MSBA and we decide to go on our own, then we could actually be requesting right away for feasibility and design money so that we would ask for more than this to get moving even faster. And so I don't want to lock us in to something that's based on 3 years ago work. And yet lock us in to go through the same process that we would have to go through anyway of getting those votes. So that's why I'm kind of like, oh, wait a minute. Let's take a pause and update everything of what we need so that we're accurate, because I wouldn't want to get 750 and it turned out that we really needed 1.2 million, and to then have to go back and ask for another 500, that makes us look like we weren't doing our homework and we weren't ready. And so that it makes me pause.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Does anyone know what a special town meeting costs?
It's like,
Used to be 10,
yeah.
$10,000.
so it's going to be 10 to 12, it's going to be 12 to 15.
Okay.
10 was the number that was thrown around several years ago.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I heard about 12,000, yes.
So originally, during the long-range planning that we start, having the dialogue around the articles, we didn't think that, amending would be possible. But we left to John to talk to town council to see what language and everything they could come up with. But we sort of like envisioned that you would not be able to amend the current article anyhow. And yes, I mentioned we collectively decided that, we should definitely push this forward, but now thinking through if this is going to jeopardize in any shape or form our filing this year for the SOI. So waiting a little bit more is not going to do anything.
Because nothing's going to happen until January anyway.
Correct.
And I was sort of thinking along the lines, and Carrie, I think I see you nodding your head a little bit, like, one thing that I thought to myself is, well, if we don't get accepted to the MSBA in December, there are some things, you could speed up the process by doing feasibility and design money at a special town meeting, or even to realize, do we even need a feasibility study, or is the town agreed that it's a project that needs to be rebuilt, right? Because the feasibility is to decide whether you're remodeling, renovating, or rebuilding, right? So I think there are some steps you can sort of leapfrog over if you wind up going back to a special town meeting in January.
Yeah, I don't think that you could do anything this time without a feasibility study.
Perhaps
Because
not,
obviously, people would like to see what is the business plan,
Right.
how much it's going to cost, right?
Right.
So,
Well, can I, since Ray is
Just-
here, can I ask,
can you just finish?
oh, sorry, yes.
So I don't think you would be able to do that without a feasibility study.
Right.
But one thing that I really actually appreciated is the fact that we do have that $350,000 warrant article there for extraordinary maintenance. So, let's truly hope that we get that approved, and that is a big deal.
Yes, and I think that warrant article is, at town meeting, that's where we tell the story of Foster School and what's going on there, why we need the money, what's brought us to this point, how much, another $350,000 is having to go into this school to keep it going for the next few months. Like, I think that's when we start building the story of what's happening at Foster with pictures and,
So Liza was really helpful and sent me the slides from with this. That was all done in 2017. And I guess my concern with waiting and to see, is that, this was identified as part of the 2005 town master plan as something we needed to do. This is 2019, and maybe we're going to do something. I think we need to make a commitment. That's why I think we should move forward with it.
I do hear, I do see, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I think that, this committee is obviously committed to seeing the Foster School rebuilt, and my conversations with AdCom and Board of Selectmen have said that and they have said it themselves in their meetings, that Foster School is the #1 priority, and that something is getting done. And I have told them, you were at the AdCom meeting, we said it at the AdCom meeting, we're not, this committee is not going back for a fourth time. And they understand that, and I think they are supportive of that as well. So, Liza, you were going to ask Ray?
Oh, yes, and Ray is on the building committee here. So Ray, when when we've gone through the process with the two other schools, and so the MSBA process is to go through feasibility and then you go to design. If we skip the MSBA process, hired a project manager, can you confirm that this would be the process? We hire a project manager who would then assist the building committee of hiring an architecture firm. The architecture firm would then work with the committee to conduct a feasibility and design process combined. So first you assess the situation and then make some design proposals. So then you could sort of condense that process together. Would that be the process?
Ray Estes, 92 Fort Hill Street, Vice Chair of the School Building Committee. So you're suggesting if you were to move forward independently?
Yeah.
So
After we've heard from the NSBA.
correct,
Yeah.
with it getting a no in December.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's definitely a different process. You can control it differently independently. Looking at potential timelines, talking to folks who've been involved in building other schools, doing it both ways, I think you could probably cut a year from the timeline doing it independently. Could be a little bit more, but probably a year. I think you're definitely right. Condensing the feasibility process is one of the key things. With the MSBA, schematic design is kind of part of feasibility, but with the MSBA, you first have to, particularly now that they've added the eligibility module and lengthened the process, and something we didn't have to go through with East and we didn't have to go through with the middle school, is they're going to make us look at all four options, right? Whether it's repair, which I think is silly, but renovation addition, or new school. There's not the same advantage that there was before with additional reimbursement points. We didn't have to. We started down that path with looking at the different options with the middle school, but then got invited into the model program, and that kind of directed where we were going. With East, I think, we needed a new school, an additional building to solve overcrowding. So there was nothing to renovate. There were no other options really looked at, and we
had a separate site.
right. And we had a site available which used to house the school
Yeah.
previously, and we were the first school under the new regime in 2006. So different story. So feasibility process with MSBA now would be more lengthy. You'd have to jump through those hoops. It would include schematic design, but you're talking about a lengthy period, which definitely could be condensed. I mean, if you decided that you needed to build a new school and you worked independently with an OPM and a designer, you could say, okay, we have a site, we know we can build, this is how we'd like to design it. You work with that designer, and you probably go through feasibility and design in a year, and then 16 months to build. So, it takes a year off
Right.
the process.
Okay. And then we would also go to, what are the chunks we'd go to town meeting for money for?
So we already have feasibility, assuming that what you have is, so you mean working independently? So you'd have to go for feasibility money, feasibility schematic design money.
Yeah, but so it's feasibility and schematic design.
Right, schematic
as
design is
one.
included in feasibility, always was.
Okay.
It's the design development that comes afterward. So if you remember with the middle school, we had feasibility money appropriated in April 2011. We worked through that spring and summer, developing the space summary. We kind of shortened the educational program aspect of it because we were invited into the model program, and it was much easier to do, and Dot was very instrumental in putting that into place, but it was easier with the model program. So with the MSBA, normally you have, as part of that feasibility and schematic design is developing your educational program, and you're doing your site investigative work. And it's not just what the building committee did a year and a half ago, identifying that you can build on a site. It's, looking at the building through all, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, all categories, looking at the whole facility, all of the deficiencies, and then coming up with a choice or a suggestion for each of the 4 options. And then you choose your preferred option. The school committee, the selectmen have to agree on that. That's what you submit to the MSBA. The MSBA has to agree on your preferred option, and then you move forward. If you remember the 2005 master plan, there were multiple options,
Yeah.
and there were preferred option this, preferred option that, and those were the ones that were pursued. So there's definitely a lengthier process with the MSBA, but schematic design is part of feasibility. So you'll have, identifying that you can build on the site. What are you going to build? And starting to, conceptually design it, putting your program together, things of that nature. And then the design development is, getting to actual drawings that translate into construction documents, which allow you to do cost estimates at different levels.
But those, the drawings, was that part of the feasibility money, or was that then put into the construction budget?
Yeah,
at a
it was
later date?
it was really design development. I mean, if you remember, we had a conceptual picture of what it might look like,
Right.
but we were basing it on a model. So AI3 took the model and tweaked it for a visual.
Yeah.
And if you remember, when I spoke at special town meeting in 2011, there was nothing behind me. There was no photo, no picture, no design, nothing. Nothing that we could really show, because it was still conceptual. It had been developed conceptually and programmatically, and the space summary you could look at, okay, how many rooms were going to be this much square feet, and do you need a music room, and yes, you need an auditorium, and you need this room and special ed space. And as part of that, you need to get together with the staff and identify, similar to what the FF&E process is, get together with staff and identify the spaces that you need, right, to fit your program. With the model, we didn't have to do that. It was a little bit streamlined. So there really isn't, too much sketches and drawings in the schematic design phase. It really comes in design development, where you take the program you've developed, you take the site, you take the preferred option, and the architect will look at the architecture in the town and will come up with a suggested drawing that incorporates all of the spaces that you need and tries to keep it within a certain style, perhaps, or you certainly can input into that, and that's during design development. That's what you get to a point where you can develop construction documents that allow you to go out to bid.
Okay.
Very helpful. Thank you.
And to Liza's point too, if this number isn't correct, if it's 3 years old, then if we go forward with it, we should probably put a correct and accurate number for if $750,000 isn't right.
You mean this one?
Yeah, if we were to go forward with this.
We don't know. I don't.
What it's going to be. Well, I'm trying to figure, I was thinking you couldn't because you wouldn't be amending, but we're not amending it anyway. Other thoughts?
I'm concerned about sending a mixed message to the MSBA. I must admit that I think several other people on the committee have given a lot of thought, talked to people, listened, and I think we owe it to the town to pull out all the stops and put our best foot forward with our application SOI to the MSBA. I don't see where there's a big difference by withdrawing this article and waiting to see what happens in December and then January, we're all back one way or the other. So I'm inclined to withdraw the article. Article Z, I think it is.
I too am going to agree with Ed, and I don't want to jeopardize the possibility of us working with the MSBA. Also, I think we need to get more townsfolk on board, and after listening to both the selectmen and the feedback from AdCom, you know, I don't feel comfortable going to town meeting with this warrant article and not having, especially advisory, on board with this. I think it makes us look unprepared, a bit weak, not having done our homework, a little bit like what Liza had said.
I think if, the one thing I just want to be very clear, though, is that withdrawing this article or not doesn't change the time frame, right? So nothing's going to get started until January of 2020 with or without the article. And I think if nothing else, even proposing this article has gotten the conversation started, which I think has been hugely important, because, I mean, honestly, I don't think 3 months ago the Board of Selectmen and AdCom thought that Foster was in, I think they thought that we could just keep applying and just waiting for the MSBA to come through. If they didn't come through in 2019, maybe they'll come through in 2020, maybe 2021. But I definitely, the sense that I've gotten from talking to them is that they completely understand that this is real. I mean, we've got to we have to do something at this school. And it has to start in 2020, whether we have MSBA with us or not. Right. And hopefully we do, because that is, to your point, that you've got to start that conversation with the town and the community to get the funding, regardless, right? I mean, whether you have MSBA funding or not.
And we, you know, when we spoke to the selectmen, I wasn't at the advisory meeting, and you weren't at the selectmen's meeting, but we did say that we need to do something about Foster. Mm-hmm. We are giving it a third shot, but after this third go, we need to start having a plan B. So we did make that very clear, but I certainly don't want to jeopardize our third go. I think we really need to, I think it would be a disservice to the town.
Yeah.
What are we basing the idea that we're going to jeopardize the third go on? Did anyone talk to anyone at the MSBA about that? Or is it just a gut feeling that we're sending a signal?
They won't answer that. I mean, they won't. I believe Pat O'Connor spoke to them, but they won't answer that question directly and say, "Oh, sure, if you go ahead and do it yourselves," and we won't take that into consideration. But they do. If you look on their website, I mean, they talk about the due diligence that they do, the background that they do, the getting the information that they do, and I just think that in the absence of not knowing that they won't consider it, you have to, the risk is that they will consider it.
Well, I was also on the website, and this is the primary things that they look at are the urgency and the need of the building.
Yep.
So I'm just trying to read the tea leaves. And again, I think with this amendment, where it goes to the Board of Selectmen and the school committee instead of just like completely removing the restriction, that doesn't send such a strong signal to the MSBA, because it's not saying we're definitely going forward with it if you don't accept us into the program. It's saying that we're going to talk about a plan B, and it's also telling the town and the parents that we went to Foster School and had a meeting there, and to a group of understandably upset parents, because the kids had been moved to the high school as a boiler, and said, we're all in support of a warrant article for this, and we did talk about it as a committee there, and then at subsequent meetings about, we're going forward one way or the other, whether we're accepted or not this third time.
Right.
And I think there's that message too.
But Carrie, the fact that we are even trying to second guess the MSBA is putting us at a risk. And I certainly don't want to take that risk.
How is it putting us at risk?
Because we can't answer the question. And so you know, if we're not going to be gaining a whole lot with this warrant article, but maybe a few months, why take the risk?
Well, we are gaining something where it's a plan, it is a plan B, instead of just waiting and hoping that we're.
But we're taking risk with it.
Well, my concern is that again, we've known about this isn't the first time the town has heard about the foster school, and we've been talking about it really since during that master plan, during the 2005 master plan. We've been talking about what to do going forward, and we haven't. I mean, we've done things, and it's been really well maintained, and I think Carlos is right, $350,000, that's going to be really, really important. But, I mean, we really need to do something about foster, and that's...
And I think we all agree with that.
Right, but we're saying this, but we need, this is more of an action.
But I think we also want to be successful when we go with Plan B, and you know, after the signals that we received back from both the selectmen and AdCom, I think we need to take that into consideration. It's important to
Yes,
go
of course,
as...
we want to be successful, absolutely, I agree. But that's not, I'm trying to, I don't understand.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that there's, that everybody agrees we need to do something. The fear is if we pull this warrant article, that there's no commitment, there's no written commitment, there's no guarantee, and that the selectmen are asking us all to take it on faith that they will do something in January 2020.
Well, they won't, I mean,
Or that, well, that they'll be okay with us calling for a special town meeting.
right, it would be for us to, yes, that we could call a special town.
So we
meeting.
can sit here and agree that we would do that. I think I would trust all of you.
Right.
and hope that you would trust us not to change our minds in a year.
It'll be a
So,
different board then, probably, so.
But we have anything in writing is the question from
So-
commitment.
so your concern is that there's actually nothing, if we pull this, there's nothing in writing.
It's not so much that there's nothing in writing, it's more that we've been talking about it a lot since 2005. And there are always reasons that people can come up with why we shouldn't move forward at that time, why it's not a good idea, maybe we should apply for a fourth time. And I think we want to avoid that and just say, and again, it's putting our money where our mouth is. We said we all support it. We've been saying that for a long time. The selectmen have been saying it for at least a few years. And so we need to act.
So at the Board of Selectmen meeting, I got up and I said that by not doing this article means they would have to wait another 4 months until the April town meeting, that God forbid something happens in between. Now, should we have this article introduced and approved, then at least we know that if denied, we have the go ahead with the feasibility study. Hopefully, we could get the feasibility study done by April town meeting, that by town meeting in April, we could then go and ask for the money to go along. And it was question that came from the selectmen whether our intent was to go along. Obviously, at that stage, when denied, perhaps that would be the case. Yes, we would intend to go along, because obviously we're not willing to, apply for the fourth time. And but I did raise that concern that something could happen in 4 months, and that we need to be a little faster. Now, hearing that perhaps we could have a town meeting in January, I'm encouraged by that. I had not heard that before. If that it is a possibility, which I never heard of happening here in town, that they met in January under special circumstances. I know that they meet on the fall. If that is doable, then so be it. But again, one of the things I've been saying since day one, because when we were talking about doing the renovation at the gym at the high school, I brought up that we should be focused at foster, being the liaison there and hearing all the issues from the parents and attending PTO. And everyone in this room agreed. Then, with the old school committee, Eileen and Cynthia, and the new school committee members all agree. So that is why I don't have any concern about this school committee being in full support of going forward with something, right?
Yeah.
And I think, it would be great for us to actually reach a consensus that what is the best way of approaching this. If in fact we can sort of like, I think Libby just, elaborated very well. If we can definitely call for a town meeting in January, and we have the support of the community, obviously, because without them, nothing's going to happen, right? We need to have them engaged. Then I'm comfortable with that.
So I agree with, we want this to be successful. I agree that the MSBA should be a priority. I also agree with what Carla said about we need to look at the best way to approach this. And I agree with Ed about pulling this for the reason of focusing on the MSBA and also for us to truly do our homework and be ready. We just found out this weekend that an article that we thought was approved, people looked at it again and said, oh, but it's not right. And I would rather us really looking at focusing first on the April application to the MSBA and making sure that we get that in as best as possible with all the detail as possible, and also gathering the community to get them organized, and then from April to December doing our homework and really knowing, or whoever the committee is, I hope I'm still here, that really buttoning up what's the plan one way or the other, so that we have every scenario and really understanding what the economy looks like, what the debt schedule looks like, and getting everybody on board so that we're really buttoned up and we're ready to go. Because our committee has been focused on a superintendent search. We spent a lot of time on that, which is also extremely important to our community. And we've been focusing on foster, but not at the detail level that we just discovered this weekend with this change. And so I think if we also really understand what would it take to do a special town meeting, what would it take, what's it even going to be if we get accepted in the MSBA, what does that mean? We have to go into the eligibility process. What do we need to deliver to the school building committee to get them ready to go to maybe speed up that eligibility process? So I would like to have the time, it's all our priority, and to really put our effort into this priority as opposed to rushing something through town meeting just because to make the statement when we will have our 6 minutes of the money for the extraordinary expenses to really reinforce that message again. And I'm not ready to go through the detail of committing ourselves to this yet, because I don't really know what I'm committing myself to.
Well, it's not really, it's no different than what we had already started doing. It's not rushing anything through town meeting. We've been talking about this for quite a while. And it's no different than if we were able to amend the original article.
But for me, this is different because the dollar amount is different, and also when I have been doing homework on the MSBA, 2017, we went straight into feasibility. Now you have to go through the eligibility period. And we don't really know what that is. It said it could be 270 days, it could be less. We don't know what that's going to take, and then then they have to pass this into feasibility. We don't really know what then their requirement would be, and so this is locking us into something that we would then have to go back to town, potentially have to go back to town meeting and ask them to do something else. And I don't want to show town meeting that we didn't necessarily do our homework.
But this article isn't really about the MSBA process. It's about whether we we can go ahead and start with a feasibility study on our own if we are denied by the MSBA, and not if, you know, and how we would go forward. It's like the next steps if we were denied by the MSBA.
But
So is
that's
there
what-
some other way that we could spell out a Plan B that doesn't require a town warrant?
Yeah, that would work, I think.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely, that's one thing
That's
that I
what-
thought, too.
That's basically
Part
what
of
I'm
the
saying,
little
yeah.
timeline, right? But so, because there was one other thing, too, though, that I was thinking with this warrant article, and at the time, when we were going through the process, I didn't really understand, I mean, I did not know the real length of the process. I didn't know the process with Board of Selectmen and AdCom and how that all played into it if we go into town meeting without their support, but also the amount of the work that needs to go into trying to get a successful answer from the MSBA, right? So talking to legislators, I mean, there's a lot of work that you can be doing, right? Talking to legislators, making sure the SOI is buttoned up. Ray's committee got the, has someone going to take a look at the SOI for us and make sure we're hitting all the right things, right? Are you sending the right pictures in? Getting the MSBA board out here for a site visit again. They came in 2017, but they didn't come back last year. So all those things that I feel like we need to be working on as a committee and helping the building committee and the foster community in getting those things done. And I sort of did not realize that that was part of that whole process. So, and I've since learned that. But I do think that we could also be, whether it happens in long-range planning or there's a special foster school subcommittee that we develop that is working on what happens next. Like, if this doesn't happen, right, then what's the plan for the January meeting? Even just logistically, when do we have to organize that? Do we have to start organizing in November, just in case? All those types of things. So I think you can be working on them simultaneously, with or without this. Sorry, Ray.
Hi, Ray Estes. So building committee is taking no position on this, right? I'm not here as a spokesman for them. I'm just trying to answer some questions as best I can. Personally, I think moving forward with this warrant article would be a mistake, and I would not support it at town meeting. I think, not that it jeopardizes our chances necessarily with the MSBA, but I think there's no way this passes town meeting. Not only do I not think the Board of Selectmen would support it, I don't think advisory would support it, but we haven't had long enough to have a discussion with folks in town to get them on board with the concept of going independently. And that's essentially what you're saying. You're asking them now to commit to moving forward with building a new school independently, right? $40 to $50 million school potentially, without the tens of millions of dollars of reimbursement. I'm not suggesting that that can't happen at some point in the future,
Right.
but there hasn't been enough discussion now, and I wouldn't feel comfortable trying to make that argument to people,
Yeah.
and I don't know that you would either. There just hasn't been enough time. There's two people, no offense, and I'm not trying to upset the foster community. I love the foster community, but there's two parents here from the foster community, okay? One's from South. There you go.
Throwing that out
So my point is, and no offense,
No, I know,
it's a
I know.
miserable night out.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of stuff going on. Everyone is busy. First night after vacation, believe me.
Yeah.
Right? But if we're this close to town meeting and you're taking a vote tonight on this, folks should know about it and should be here and should be weighing in and should reminding you how important it is. I know it's important. I know they know it's important, but this is not how it's done. If you're going to get something like this done, it's 100 people in this room, and it's socializing it, and it's making sure that folks in the town understand, their questions are answered, and they're on board with it. You can't go into town meeting asking this without knowing what the answer is going to be.
No, thank you. I do not disagree with that either, because I do think that potentially this not passing at town meeting, which I don't think I don't know, but it not passing a town meeting, I think gets the conversation going in a bad direction when it comes to foster school. That's one of my unspoken fears up until right now, because that's my concern, that if it doesn't pass a town meeting, then the conversation takes a negative turn when it comes to trying to go it alone or even with the MSBA. So.
One of the things that perhaps we can consider moving forward is perhaps the long range, along with the community outreach or one or the other by themselves, organize some community conversation like we had at Foster, to
Yeah.
socialize
Yeah.
a little more and let people know how important it is for them to participate.
Well, community outreach, I was going to speak to this when we did the reports, ask each of you to go to your school that you're a liaison for and discuss the budget, the warrant articles that we're putting forward. I kind of wanted to wait until after tonight, but we were going to meet. It was planned for Thursday. I've been gone out of the country, so I haven't even had a chance to write you an email, Dot, if we can move that meeting to Friday. I also wanted to see where the discussions were going, so that we all go to our schools with the same message.
Sounds good.
So,
And we're working on a frequently asked questions. And
We
that's
are.
another thing it was really hard to put that into words without knowing for
Well,
sure where the.
and that goes back to the point of being prepared. There's going to be a lot of questions when we start talking about going alone, which I do think this warrant article gives that message. And so we need to be prepared to answer them. And even we struggled with answering the questions. We still have a lot of work to do on that. And I think that work should continue, regardless of what is decided tonight.
Definitely, yeah.
Because it'll come in very, very handy at one point and useful to all of the
Right.
members.
We need the elevator speech, we need
Yeah,
the cocktail
yeah.
speech, we need the coffee,
Let me
taking
add,
walk
too,
speech.
That if we had accepted MSBA, we need a community effort for that process as well.
Right.
Because that process goes through town meeting at multiple stages. And it's 2/3 vote every time. And so that's where we need to support the community and assist the Friends of Hingham Public Schools to educate parents, what is the town meeting process? Why do you need a 2/3 vote? Then for construction, you need a ballot vote 1 week after that. And so all of those steps, I'm assuming we're going to get accepted to the MSBA. We got to be positive about that for the money. And so regardless, wherever it goes, there's education of the whole community that we can assist with. So I don't want, we have to stay on this, all paths of how we have to educate people. And those questions would come up at town meeting, and I agree with Ray. I've been up there myself. When you get asked the question, I remember in 2017, I got asked the question, so does this mean we're going forward, and how much is it going to cost? And I had to say, well, we're hoping we get accepted, and the MSBA will help us figure out what that cost will be. But if Michelle is up there and she has to answer those questions, we don't have an answer to those things. So,
There's a lot of unknowns.
yeah.
Dr. Gale.
I wanted to support what both Ray and Liza just said, and I mentioned this at the building committee meeting 2 weeks ago, that we are only going to get another school, a new school, a renovated school, if it's the entire community. And you look at the recent schools we've been able to add, and the middle school had its own unique situation because of the condition of the building, but also because it's a building that serves the entire population. The high school renovation, the entire population. The East School renovation, because all 4 of our schools were overcrowded. All 4 were overcrowded, and there was a vested interest. And the point about education, I think we've got to bring everybody together around the same message and the same need to knows. And that isn't all about the condition of foster. We are never going to get a school just because foster parents want it. It has to be that everybody sees the need and the value for it. And we're never going to get a school if people violate campaign finance laws, do the wrong thing. I'm a living example of a simple drawing, not a design, a drawing of what a renovated high school might look like, caused a revolt because people didn't know it shouldn't be in the building. People in my shoes have had to pay back copying costs and so on because somebody complained about their having used school funds to run off flyers that were out and about. Those sound like little things now, but now is when we need to start the education. So we have, our responsibility is to provide the information, but the community's responsibility is to be willing and spend their time and come and hear the information, or to do it on TV, mini course on TV or an online course or whatever, and get people to be able to come. So naturally, parents are focused on why they want the school, and they want it now, and I absolutely understand how that feels, but how that feels is not going to get us a new school. So I do think that we haven't had enough socializing time. I kind of wish that there were a system for any town warrant item where one could take a straw vote before you have to decide whether or not you want to put a warrant item in there, to see what kind of grassroots support there is. What are the questions that people are asking that you can get answered in advance? So it's a community effort. It shouldn't be something that we think of doing for foster. It should be that all the parents in town, and in fact all the citizens in town, should be doing for our kids. And until we can change that thinking among the current population, whether that population is school committee, selectmen, advisory committee, citizens in town with no children, parents in town, or whether we can change it with a group that's willing to get the effort started. I mean, people were so excited about the failure to get the approval this time. They were so excited about the day that we had to send a school, and it could happen any day to any school, to another building. But we've had many meetings. We had the joint meeting. I have never seen a joint meeting for the budget so poorly attended by citizens and parents as this year. Never. And never is a long time in my, my tenure here, as you know. It's a long time. So we need to, and some of that is just cultural thinking. It shifts. People have different priorities at different times in their lives than they did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, what. So some of it is just stuff that happens over time. But I believe that the things that will help us get where we need to be haven't changed all that much. And they begin and end with education, and they begin with people's willingness to get out there and say what needs to be done, and not just come to the meetings that are convenient to come to, or to say, there, I went and I had my say and I feel better about that. And I know that I was not here a lot, but the meetings that occurred around the lack of getting the nod from MSBA this year and the angst that went with that. But I heard about those kinds of things, and I think for a long time we've been focusing on the wrong thing. We've been focusing on the wrong thing. But I know a lot of you, if not all of you, were moved by what parents had to say that night and the fact they want a commitment and they wanted somebody to support them. I get all of that. But we need more than that. We need, what is it that I'm going to do to make this happen? Getting a commitment, a verbal commitment from you or from the selectmen or from somebody to say, yes, this is our highest priority. That's a need that people have, an emotional need. So we said it, but what are we going to do? What are we going to do about it? And we can't afford to lose any vote, particularly the first one. because that suggests to you how many people would be willing to vote a second time and a third time, and the debt exclusion and all of those things. So I think we need to put together, a foster school building academy, and everybody can have a different role in what they would do to forward it. Who's going to give lessons on, how you behave at town meeting and how you don't, and what you have in the room and what you don't, and who runs off the papers, and who's going to be the Friends of the Hingham Public Schools. Now, I know that that title has been given to, several different committees over the year. Naturally, it would be. But for this, we had building committees that started and fundraising committees, and fundraising for the fundraising committees. It started 2 years before things are going on. And so it's not going to happen just that MSBA is going to say yes and everybody's going to clap, and then everybody will go back to doing what they normally do. And Ray and his committee will try to get something built, but there's a long way between here and there. So.
Thank you. Ed.
I move the question.
All right. Have a second? Do I need a second?
So is our motion to withdraw warrant article Z?
I move the question means we no longer,
Oh,
we
no longer discuss?
We no longer discuss.
Yes, okay.
In other words, has everybody had their
Yes.
say?
And everyone,
That needs a second and a
I second it.
majority.
second to move the question, and everyone agree?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to remove warrant article Z from this year's town meeting.
Article Z, the foster article
You
to
need to
amend
read it.
the feasibility study vote.
Anyone want a second?
I'll second.
Oh, Ed was second. All right, so Kay made the motion and Ed seconded. All right, so any more discussion of the, no? All right, so all in favor of withdrawing the motion to withdraw warrant Z? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so all opposed, nay, and everybody voted yes? Okay, thank you. So we've got a lot of work to do, and we've got a lot to get done with the MSBA. So I do think that possibly we keep this as just a sort of regular agenda item on our agendas going forward, just discussion of the foster school next steps, what we can do, getting ready for the MSBA, and then, and then discussions of the planning of how we get community outreach, how we get out to the schools, how we get out to the community, how do we get out to parents, because I do think, and I know, people from the foster community and other people in the community will be disappointed that we voted this way tonight, but I do think that this, even proposing this warrant article, did get the conversation started, and it did get people awakened to the needs of the foster school, and it's been trickling out further than just the foster school community, right? So, I mean, I will take the Board of Selectmen and AdCom at their word that they understand that this is the last time that we want to go for the funding with the MSBA, and that more importantly, though, that they understand the need and that they're willing to do what they can do to support us as we move forward, including this year as we go through the MSBA, right? There's a lot of people in this town who know a lot of people in the state and in the legislature, and we really need to get those contacts going. So, Carrie.
I just request to, obviously not tonight, but on a future agenda in fairly near future,
Yep.
that we either put I don't know if it's long-range planning or a separate foster group, as you had said, to work on a Plan B. I know we have to put as much energy as possible into the MSBA, 'cause
Yep.
hopefully that'll work, but I think it's really important to have a Plan B and not wait until if we're rejected, then to figure out what to do next. And all the homework that you were talking about, Liza, I think it's really important that we start doing that. So if we could put that on an agenda in the not-too-distant future, that'd be good.
Okay. I mean, I think whatever we talk about, Plan A always has to have Plan B. It's like,
Right.
you can't really talk about one without the other in a way.
Yeah.
Right, but
We've really
digging
gotta
into,
sell
digging it, yeah,
both.
definitely, yeah, and digging into the details and, right, all the frequently asked questions and the stuff we're working on for community outreach too will be helpful for whatever we would do going forward, I think, too. So.
Okay, all right. Ray? Thanks, Carrie.
Just real quick, and I'm going home to eat dinner. So I think John will remind you that I think the building committee is scheduled, we tentatively set a date to meet March 28th. John's purpose for that was that'll be just prior to his being ready to submit the refreshed SOI, and he wanted to get that in front of the building committee just to, go over it. I think between now and then, you'll have an opportunity to send it to Scott, as we talked about, because I think he can really be helpful in getting us to where we need to be. And then so I would say focus on your budget for the next month and getting ready for town meeting. John will do his work on the SOI. It's just my suggestion. Let that get to the point. Building committee bless it. John will submit it, and then that's when you can start thinking about how you want to, socialize and work on that. That's just my suggestion. I would also say I'm happy to answer questions to help you with fact sheets or question sheets. I developed one for the middle school. It's a very useful tool. So if there's information that I can help with, or you have something drafted, you want to send it, I'm happy to look at it or whatever. So I'm happy to be helpful in that.
Right,
Have a good.
Did you still have the middle school one?
I do.
Could you send it to me?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. Great, thanks.
Good night.
We should work in the next month on our presentation for town meeting, for the extraordinary expenses, so that we can tell that story. It'll be a lot of the same information you're pulling together for the SOI. But if we put that, update the presentation we made in 2017 with new pictures, new repairs done, yeah, I think that will be a powerful message. Use our 6 minutes to the maximum.
Right.
That's a huge positive right there. Yeah, with the $350,000. I think that should be our focus
Right.
on the positive.
Then we can organize some people to ask questions from the floor. There's all those kinds of strategies that we can keep the message going. So.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you, everybody. All right, item 7, new business. 7.1 is to receive notification of certain appointments. Kristen McKenna from Food Service Technician at Foster School, and Michelle Magner, Kids in Action Teacher. Welcome, and to receive notification of the resignation of Colleen Frank, school psychologist at Plymouth River School. Item number 8, any other items not known in 48 hours? Seeing, okay. Seeing none. And then 9, subcommittee and project reports. So, do you want to go first, Kay?
Well, I kind of already mentioned that community outreach is going to be meeting this week. Originally it was planned for Thursday, but Dot, do you have time on Friday? If we moved it a day? Dot? Sorry, we need to move the community outreach meeting. It was originally planned for this Thursday. Do you have time on Friday? If not, I'll just.
Okay, sorry. The thing that was going to conflict got canceled.
Oh, it did? So I guess we can leave, if I can get it posted tomorrow. Yeah,
Okay. Sorry.
tomorrow morning.
What time is your meeting?
I think it was at 9. I might,
Yes.
was it at 9
Make it at
a.m.?
9:15 and post it at 8:40.
I'll send it to Pam tonight. She'll have it first thing in the morning.
48 hours.
So we're still on,
Oh, it's still on.
It's still on the sorry.
okay, so we will meet as planned this Thursday, 9:15.
Kay, community outreach will share the Hingham Public Schools kindergarten information?
Yes, I
Okay.
can do that.
All right.
Once I know that it's all up on the web page,
right.
Jamie, maybe you can just,
Well, it's already on the webpage. I think the conversation will post on Facebook and then sharing the Facebook post, which I'll do in the morning.
okay,
both.
so yeah, that
Share
would be
the
the
link and
easiest.
yeah.
All right. And then, but back to us meeting on Friday or Thursday now. We did want all of the liaisons to reach out to their schools and find out when the PTOs are meeting next. It would be wise if everyone could go and visit the school and start talking about the budget, and especially maybe the warrant article that we have, the 3 remaining, to socialize those before town meeting. So that way we can
And you
spread the
so
information.
Community outreach will present us with the template, the items, what you address and everything.
We can. It's basically the budget and then the warrant articles.
Sounds like a good
The
idea.
superintendent search, I think, is completed, so not too much to report there. And then policy, nothing at the moment.
Okay, one other thing for community outreach, we had discussed, I sent you and Kay, the information from Tracy Novick from Mask about social media
yes.
training.
Yes.
And Kay had mentioned maybe waiting for the new, for after the elections.
Yes.
Is that what people want to do, or, I mean?
I think we have so much going on right now, but
how
I
does-
don't need the training. I think it would be better for the
Get
new
that on
members.
camera?
She might be able to combine charting the course and that. Like if we did it over the summer with the new
Oh,
people.
Yeah.
So it might
just,
make
Yeah, I
sense.
don't care either way, I wanted to get back to her.
Yeah, maybe it makes sense to wait for the new members to join, because you're right, because Kay won't be here, so.
We
Yeah.
have town meeting
And then
right
right
after
after
that.
meeting. All right. Is that
Yeah.
good? Okay, awesome, thank you. All right, long range.
So, I don't mean to interrupt,
Oh, no,
but
go ahead.
Just, Kay, relative to policy, I did forward you this evening, to you, Michelle and Ed, the opinion that we just received this last week on the public comment section of the agenda. So it's lengthy, it's incredibly comprehensive. So whenever the committee meets, we have it set aside, but you have a digital copy, and hard copies will be available for your subcommittee. Okay.
So long range, we don't have anything new. Do you have actually an update for us on where are we with the master plan?
We have the vendors, they're sort of finishing up their study, so I think within the next month or so, we'll have some good stuff.
Now, when will we hear from Capital?
Should be short.
They're meeting tonight.
They're
Sorry.
meeting with AdCom tonight.
No, they're meeting on their own tonight.
Oh, on their own, on their own tonight, that's right. And then Thursday, they're meeting with AdCom. So
Should hit
can you go, Carlos, could you go
Thursday?
Thursday AdCom meeting to talk about the,
George. Sorry.
no,
Is, on Thursday, is Capital Outlay presenting their budget to you too? Yeah.
I can go.
okay. So if there's anything that comes up on capital outlay, you
I'll
can
be
speak to.
back.
Because I actually cannot be at AdCom on Thursday because I'm going to be traveling. But Liza's will go to,
If you can come too.
Which one?
If you
You
can
are?
come too and answer the capital questions and then I can.
Which one is that one?
For the advisory committee meeting?
On
Having the budget hearing
Thursday.
on Thursday.
Thursday? Okay,
Yes.
sure.
all right. And then,
Do we need to post, or should I just not talk?
so that
We
was, actually,
should.
we'll post it.
Okay.
We will post it. Sorry, I'm interrupting your thing, but, so we'll post Thursday's AdCom budget hearing and capital outlay. And,
This Thursday?
Tuesday, I did not post that ACES subcommittee, meeting, so who's planning to go to that? It's tomorrow, 9:00. So I can go, the 3 of us, is anyone else planning to go? Okay, so if there's 3, we don't need to post, right? Okay, all right. Sorry, thank you, all right, so I'll ask Pam to post Thursday's meeting, okay. Sorry, Carlos, anything else on long range?
I think you all received the email from Rich Swanson, the report from the NEASC, just reporting the progress of the accreditation. And you saw that the high school implemented a advisory committee for the students. So just wanted to let you know that, and they that was part of a request from EASC, and they have.
Well, I think they have freshman advisory already. And then that's a recommendation from advisory to do it in the other grades, and so they're working on it. I don't think they've
Okay.
established it yet, correct? Okay.
Okay, so that's what it is. Okay.
Yes.
I don't want to get the wrong things. I know that they had mentioned a couple of times, so.
Yeah.
Salary negotiations, we're going to follow up on what we had at the executive session, on the individual contracts, dates to be determined. And on foster school, since I'm the liaison, just so community outreach knows, they do have a PTO meeting on Wednesday, March 13th. So if for our March 11th school committee meeting, if you guys can have your brief of what, and the frequently asked questions, or then I'll have it for the 13th. And it's 7 p.m. on the 13th. So if you can bring your stuff on the 11th, we can all talk about it, make sure we're all on the same page. And then, but I know that one's already scheduled, so I just thought I'd share that with you.
Anyone up for a special ed subcommittee meeting on March 11th, then? Because we have a meeting on the 11th, and then your foster PTO meeting is on the
Yeah,
13th.
I can do that. Yeah, I could do that.
The 11th? Yeah, okay, all right.
Before, or?
You have a school committee?
I'm going to be away.
Oh, you're away.
I'm going to be away as well.
Okay.
Don't you?
For the, sorry, you're here March 11th?
No,
Oh, no,
no.
sorry, you're here for the school committee meeting on the 10th?
Yes. yeah.
Okay. Okay, sorry.
On the 10th?
The school committee is the 11th,
Oh, okay, so I'm here for that.
so you're here for that?
Yeah.
But you are not, Carlos. Okay, but you are not here on the 12th, sorry.
Yes.
Okay. I'll email you guys and figure out a special ed date. Any other liaison reports? Yes.
Emma Filthy had mentioned
I know.
that for SNAP was featured on the local Channel 4, which was great. And for the East School Council, they're having 2 focus groups, one in the morning, one in the evening for parents. Invitations have been sent out. They're having another Boosterthon fundraiser, and they're going to have a parent social in April, which seems like a cool idea. They did it last year. They picked a TED Talk and had everyone watch in advance, and then I think they watched it again at the social, and then discussed it and broke out into groups, and it was very successful. So they're going to do that again. So, yeah.
So, for HEF, it's still the month of February, and so you can still donate and have your donation matched up to a total of $40,000. So if you're going to plan to donate to HEF, do it now. And then
What's the deadline on that?
so just to have it matched, it's February 28th. They'll take your money anytime.
I'm talking about the match.
The matching is till the end of February. They were originally planning on having a coffee on the 28th, but that's been moved to the fall. But everything else is in full swing. Is there anything else I should say about HEF, Jimmy?
What's their fundraiser?
I can
That
find
sounds
that.
about right. Let me just double.
I can't find anything in my calendar. It's like all very carefully laid out, but.
The 29th, you think? It is, sorry, yes. March 29th from 7 to 10 down at
Paragon Boardwalk.
Paragon Boardwalk in Hull.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. And they have other things too. Cycle Town and Punch Up or Glove Up.
So the next 2 meetings of the Hingham High School PTO are March 7 and April 4th, both at 9:30 a.m. at room 103.
Right, March 7th.
Can you go, Carlos?
To the March 7, sure.
But does that mean that we have to have the FAQ by then?
I think it's more important for Liza,
March.
since she's going to Foster.
Yeah, and I've got the middle
I don't
school
think
the
we'll
day
get it.
after that. I'm middle school on the 14th.
It would be nice, let's see how far we get on Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we can send what
It
we
might
have,
be
and
a
then
little
we
bit-
socialize the budget too,
Right.
so, yeah.
So let's see how far we get on Thursday.
Okay.
We'll-
I mean, if we can, it'll be a work in progress. It's not
Right,
like it'll never be
definitely.
finished.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think we'll get there.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for all that work. All right, anything else?
Sorry.
Oh.
Go ahead.
So I went to the middle school for the school council meeting today, and the two biggest things of top topics of conversation, one was just vaping and how, like, kids are, not so much sixth graders or even seventh graders, but eighth graders are, it's very nonchalant about it. And if anybody has any suggestions about how to stop that from happening, we are all ears. Derek Smith did mention that he's heard about a school, I forget which one, that has implemented detectors, vaping detectors. And it will alert somebody's phone if somebody's vaping in the bathroom. By the time they get to the bathroom, the kid's gone. And so then they have to start looking at surveillance videos and all that, and it's extremely time-consuming process. And he doesn't know how much it would cost. But that's one thing that he's heard that one school is doing. So anyway, we just talked about that. And then he was also very excited to say that he started doing research on how to implement the RTI initiative, and he's going to other schools to research how they're doing it, and he's trying to figure out how to fit it into the school time frame, and like maybe taking a minute away from each break in between classes, and opening up a 20-minute period where they can implement the special needs and the three tiers of the triangle, giving kids options of what to do. He's all still very much in planning stages, and sounds like a really hard puzzle to put together to me. But he seemed really excited about getting it going, or thinking about it anyway.
Did you have something?
Tomorrow night, the selectmen will be voting on the sailing and ski teams using the Back River as a site for their spring season. Skiing. It's a different issue. Rowing and, yeah, no.
I want to do that.
Rowing and sailing.
West has a good rowers.
But
We
using,
have a ski team behind the skulls.
they already did that, yeah. In any event, they'll be voting tomorrow night, and it's quite an involved process because it involves regulations from the state and a lot of paperwork, and Susan Murphy has been getting all of that organized, and so tomorrow night is a selectman vote. I will be there. I think we don't need more than that. We have all of the things that needed to be submitted finally in place, and I think ultimately there needs to be some serious thinking on everybody's part. Is that going to be what we want as a permanent location? Because there is another process that we would need to go through if that were the case, as opposed to a season-by-season effort. And the hockey team boys are ranked number 3 in the Super 8, which is an amazing accomplishment. That was just announced today. So.
All right, anything else? All right, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, thank you. Meeting adjourned.